and happy to be talking about story, the narrative that we are living, the stories that we tell ourselves, the stories that we have experienced, that we want to start really looking at where we've been and really writing a great story with our own lives. Well, our story is it's the where we've been, it's the narrative that we're living, and the narrative, we bring our story into every area of life. It's the earth that we've tread, it's the places that we've been, the unique story that we're living with our lives. And sometimes we can get stuck in the day-to-day mundane details and not think that there's a story here being written and that I'm participating in. And so, with our past, we can use that to glean the lesson, to learn the lesson about where we've been and the experiences that we've had. Or we can be in a situation where we can say, well, this is the story that I've led. And so these are the choices that I've made as a result of it. And they haven't been very good, but life has been rough for me. And the reality is that there's always a greater lesson. There's a greater good that comes out of our harder circumstances. And that will, it affects our choices today. It affects our character. It affects everything in our lives and everything that we touch. The narrative of what we're living out and what we're deciding the different stories in our lives have meant, if that makes sense. And isn't it really funny too? Because really it's about getting the lesson and learning. If you had the story of money for me growing up, I told Shelly before we started recording that my dad used to say, do you have a hole in your pocket? Because I was such a spender. I thought money was just for spending. You get money and that's because you need to spend it. So I'm a good flower. Like the outflow is always really, really good for me. So, but it's really looking at the stories that we've grown up with and what has really informed who we are today. And when you read a biography of someone, or you hear like a really good news story about somebody that came from nothing or came from something really hard, and we all have hard things in our past, right? So by taking that and really sort of flipping the switch on where the light could be, right? Like bringing the light to something that could have been really dark, that really sort of brings something out in us that, oh, I got through that. I got past that hard thing. Anytime I read a biography or a story about a person, if they just sort of lived this really happy little connected little life, and, it's not that interesting, but the hard things that we've been through really inform where we are today. Let's use that juice. Let's use that in order to, really see our strength, honestly, and to inspire other people to do the same. And that's how we connect, right? You think money is just numbers and, data, but really, even our story around money, we connect around stories. So being really clear of where we've been and the stories that we've lived is a great connection point. And Shelly and I did this, it was a speaking event, and it was regarding story, and it was obviously sharing our stories. And I started on my phone a list of my stories and childhood stories and things that maybe they weren't super meaningful, but for some reason they stuck out and there was a story in my head around it. And really it brought out a lot of humor, and it brought out this really fun, oh my gosh, at 4 years old, I was in the shoe section when my mom lost me at the mall, thinking I was in the toy section. She's looking for me, and here I am in the shoes. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that really telling about me today? Yeah. But really sort of having a sense of that's not a really, say, formative story necessarily, but it's fun. And it's really just looking at our lives and extracting those things that are that are really unique about who we are, and inspiring other people to do the same. I think that's the value in story, is the ability to just connect in it and to, have a little fun with it, or to really look at it and try to get the absolute beauty out of it. And so many women who have experienced the same thing, they've experienced divorce. And so it allows us, by getting really clear of our own stories, it allows us to have compassion for where other people are or have been as well. Yeah. So I think that that's a really important thing. So
thank you.
Yeah. My action step today is to encourage you, take a different, if there's something you want to learn or a lesson you want to kind of make sense of that you're going through right now, take every different area of life. And this advice, I have to say, this was given to me by a friend years ago after we went to a conference. And we made a storyline with our lives. And so it was every significant event that we had experienced. And it was the more serious things, or the bigger achievements and things like that. And it was a timeline of, say, 10 events in that. And I was looking at, there was a relationship that I was in, and I was looking at that, and there was something I was trying to understand with that. And my friend said, why don't you go through and make a relationship timeline with all of the stories and highlights and lowlights of relationships that you've been in? And I really loved that. And, Shelley, you can do that with finances as well. But if you're starting to get clear on your story, really just kind of look back and think of what those significant events that have really shaped who you are, how do they fall in together?
I love it.
It gives you a little bit more of a perspective when you look at it kind of all together. And when I did that, it was a huge thing for me and a huge learning for me.